Hi, this is Eternal King here bringing you another LOR video today. So we are very close, very close to Eternal Ladder being unlocked. It is happening on the 19th, so it is happening this week, and it's very exciting. Very exciting that we are getting Eternal Ladder back online, and I wanted to make a video talking about what are going to be the undisputable top decks of this Eternal season. Just based on, all the playtime that I've had with the format. Again, I've been playing Eternal basically non-stop since the expansion. Everyone else has been playing Standard. And typically, when you see those Standard players come into Eternal, they're going to do pretty badly. So, just talking about what is good, what isn't good for Eternal for this new season. So, first thing, Emperor's Army is Irelia. You can build the deck different ways. I don't really care what your ratioing is, but you should be running this card as a 3 of. You run Emperor's Army as a 3 of in Azir Irelia now, 100% guaranteed. There is no reason not to, because again, that buff of 2 damage with a Blade Dance rally mechanic is so strong, right? Like how you can, on average, with an Irelia, you can Blade Dance twice and attack once, all in the same turn, while popping Emperor's Army. You can basically play it on curve and it's good, or you can slow roll the last stage for when it's optimal and you have enough mana to kind of pop off. You don't have to, again, it's a story card. You have that flexibility. You can wait for, stage 3, or if you have multiple in hand, you can just pop it for tempo and damage. So if you have like 2 Emperor's Army, feel free to pop one. It's not going to make a difference. Or you can slow roll it and wait to pop the last stage when it's optimal for you, where you can Blade Dance multiple times a turn. That's going to be exceptionally powerful. It's going to be just as powerful as the next deck we're going to be talking about. So this is top tier 1. The next one is going to be Iron Conquest. So this is one that Standard players are familiar with, so I don't really need to explain why the card is good. Again, much like Emperor's Army being amazing for Azir Irelia, the biggest buff for Hecarim is Iron Conquest, right? So any deck that is running, any Ephemeral deck that is running Iron Conquest as a 3 of, a mandatory 3 of this card, is going to be pretty good this season. And the reason for that is that there's just a lot of really nasty things you can do with it in Eternal. So for example, Azir Irelia likes to run things like, snowbally 1-drops, so Sparring Student, right? So Sparring Student is very good in Blade Dance decks because it's a 1-drop that spirals out of control. There's nothing stopping you from running Sparring Student in an Ephemeral deck, and you can just like copy multiple versions of Sparring Student, and that's quite strong based on what I've seen. I think the strongest Iron Conquest decks that I've seen in Eternal tend to go in on Sparring Student, and then duplicating him on curve on 2, and now you just have 2 Ephemeral Sparring Students in hand, and then obviously he gets buffed by all your Ephemeral buffers as well, and it's just gross. It's very gross. So typically they run Sparring Student as a 3 of and Shadow Apprentice as a 3 of, and these two together with Iron Conquest are just gross. It's just so much aggressive tempo for like 1 mana plays, and you can play it multiple times. It's disgusting. I can't even overstate how powerful that is. So basically, Iron Conquest with Sparring Student, Shadow Apprentice, very strong. And usually you run, I believe, the Green Glade 2 mana card as well, but typically you see a lot of the 1-drop spam, so it's possible you don't run. I think you still do, but of course you're running Soul Shepherd and things like that, your tribal buffers, you're running your Shark Chariots, you're running your Rally card on 5. Again, like a lot of these archetypes kind of auto build, so I don't really need to walk you through how to build a Hecarim deck when it's that, ubiquitous and standard. It's also going to be good in Eternal. It's just going to be faster. Like, that's the big difference between, again, a deck like that. Why are some decks transferable to Eternal from Standard, and why are some decks not transferable? Typically, it's based on acceleration. So if an Ephemeral deck can go faster in Eternal, it is Eternal viable, and it most definitely can go faster. We have seen that in multiple cases. So again, very aggressive, very fast, big rallies, really nasty deck. Just as good as upgraded Azir Irelia is going to be upgraded ephemerals. So those are both top tier. Old stuff, things like Annie Jhin. Again, Annie Jhin's just fun, right? There's nothing wrong with Annie Jhin in terms of its construction. Everything about the deck is elegant and perfect. It insta-flips Annie. It insta-flips Jhin, assuming you know what you're doing. You have big stuns, so typically you'll run 8 stuns. Stage Hand, Sunhawk, 2 pirouettes. Dragon for removal value, because it removes it 2-for-1s. Even if you're not in an Eddy deck, it 2-for-1s and it's Burning Face. Like, you still run 2 dragons. You can drag something big. It's good to have 2 of them. You don't want too many because you're not a big, you want a low curve. You want to stay low to the ground. I find 2 dragons is perfect. Then you have your decimates. So again, a lot of burn, a lot of skill procs, and a lot of tempo. And that's the way Annie Jhin functions, and a lot of turbo leveling. Top tier deck, nothing about that is going to be bad. Other things like Ziggs Poppy. So again, Ziggs Poppy is never bad, just based on the stats. The only question about Ziggs Poppy this season is going to be whether or not they run something like Gloom Sprites. Gloom Sprites being the one new 1-mana card, but it's also possible that the deck doesn't need it because it's already so good at going wide. I think Gloom Sprites is an acceptable replacement for House Spider. House Spider's always felt a little awkward in this shell, so I think if you want to run Gloom Sprites over House Spider, that's okay. It also means that you can mulligan away some of your 1-drops more aggressively and draw back into them and things like that, and prioritize Poppy or whatever else burn cards. So again, there'll be some version of Ziggs Poppy that is also going to be meta and very effective. Temple's the other big one. So essentially Sunken Temple, using the new cards like Soaring Cartographer, Candlelit Prayer. There will be a temple list out there, some version of temple that is top tier. There's just these are undisputable truths about like what are going to be some of the best decks this season in Eternal. And then finally, we have my Rise Shell. My Rise Shell is insanely good at one thing and one thing only. It is designed to punish stat spam and open attack spam. So that's standard in a nutshell. Everything that's standard is basically stat spam and open attack spam. Like, that's the format. That's undisputable. That the people who are most optimal at doing those 2 things are the best at standard. This deck is designed to basically reject their entire worldview, because, again, you have things like Leveled Rise, attacking with Steel Gale, allowing you to spend mana optimally to shut something down prior to the opponent's attack phase. So again, a lot of what Rise does is reactive. So you're like, okay, I'm going to Steel Tempest a thing, I'm going to Homecoming a thing, and I'm gonna Unworthy Souls the third thing, or get the stun off the landmark. So it's like 2 Steel Tempests and then a third thing. Like, typically you're stunning and bouncing around 3 things per turn, assuming your opponent's competent and decent at the game. You should always be prepped in a Rise Shell to basically stick 3 things on a stack at any point in time, shut down 3 attacks. Then any sort of bleed damage you take, which is just like trickle damage from those open attack spams you're taking over time, will be healed away by Eye of the Dragon. It'll be healed away by Ritual of Renewal. It'll be healed away by Rejuvenating Breeze, and the Healing Landmark. This has so much healing in it that open attack spam is basically fully negated through those mechanics. Basically being able to spend mana efficiently with the Steel Gale on your turn, including getting a free refund off of the Rise attack, things like that. So typically what I'll do is I'll attack, and then when the opponent chooses a block, I'll Steel Gale, or I'll Steel Gale, attack with the Rise, get the refund, and then bounce. There's a lot of really complicated plays you can make that way that are very, very strong. But Steel Gale is mandatory. If you're not running Steel Gale in the new Rise deck, there's just no reason to be playing Rise right now, because Steel Gale is just so damn good with the way that Rise interacts with the opponent. It changes the mechanics of how Rise interacts with the opponent. Anyway, so then that brings us to the last deck. This is like the Eddy killer, the stat spam killer. Then what is Eddy looking like right now? Well, it's basically this, right? Like, every single Eddy deck is running 1 card in particular. It is the linchpin card of Eddy. It is Cloud Drake, right? The whole point of Cloud Drake is it basically says, okay, I'm a 6-drop, I come down, I discount the costs of all your other 6-drops. So you can potentially play multiple a turn. or get Eddy out of your hand faster, the one copy of Eddy you're going to have out of your hand faster, things like that. Cloud Drake is the linchpin card of every single Eddy deck, which is also why every single Eddy deck plays the same, because they all run Cloud Drake, or they should run Cloud Drake at the very least. There's no reason why they shouldn't. So again, I used to make a distinction between like Tempo Eddy and Ramp Eddy. I don't even make that distinction anymore because they all feel so like they all basically are Cloud Drake decks, right? Like every single one. It could be Demacia and then they're playing Cloud Drake with Mobilize, or it could be Freljord and they're playing Ramp with Cloud Drake, or they're playing, you know, Auction, but they're playing it with Cloud Drake. Like every single deck is just a Cloud Drake deck with Eddy. It's all the same stuff. All the exact same. And so typically you play Cloud Drake, you give it a challenger, and then you challenge something. Obviously the great thing about my Rise shell is that it doesn't care about any of that. You can play as much stuff as you want, and you can discount as much stuff as you want. Have infinite mana, infinite stuns, infinite bounces, and then all the chip damage you deal to me is going to be healed away. So it doesn't care about open attack spam, it doesn't care about stat spam. Which is why my Rise deck is top tier just right now, into this meta specifically, until Eddy gets nerfed. Which the devs have said they're looking at, because again, it does, it needs a nerf. You have to choose very specific hard counters right now to have fun into Eddy. Those hard counters are exceptionally effective, but you have to choose very specific hard counters. And then, yeah, that's kind of, you know, more or less it, right? Is like you're going to have your combo rally decks, you're going to have your aggro decks, you're going to have your OTK decks, and then very specific control lists that might be viable. But I don't know, I've been trying to make like Jace Lux work, and then Jace Lux runs into Eddy, and then everything is huge, so your Jace Lux has to like... It's actually a pretty bad matchup. Jace Lux into Eddy does not feel great, to me specifically. I don't like that matchup at all. So again, I would stay away from like hard control right now, and I would focus on OTK control. OTK control essentially being things like Bandletree, right? So Bandletree being good, where you have access to, you know, cheap flocks, cheap disintegrates, things like that. 3 mana kills, all very cheap on curve removal, and I would probably run mine slightly more like slightly more kill heavy personally. Like I might run like 3 swipes, and I might do it like this, and then 1 group shot. I don't think group shot's amazing in this deck, but that's just me. I would slightly tech this more on the hard kill side, but regardless, OTK control with things like Bandletree, OTK control with things like Rise. Those are the 2 big ones right now. And then, you know, you can try to meme a little bit with things like Fiora. Fiora's going to feel good into certain things. You know, Healing Spring might feel good into certain things, but not Eddy specifically, because again, everything's big in Eddy. So, you know, if you play a Fiora into a decent Eddy player, they just won't play anything until turn 6, which is a problem for you. But yeah, you might still be able to get around them that way. And then obviously other versions of go wide aggro, like Jinx, Lulu, being okay. That's basically what the meta is going to be when Eternal Ladder unlocks. There's really no 2 ways around it. Everything else is going to feel kind of bad. Mid-range is going to feel bad into Eddy. Control that does not have enough hard removal, because I like Kindred will do okay. I really like Shadow Isle's Kindred for its ability to deal with Eddy well enough, thanks to just the abundance of like hard kill cards. Again, Noxus control, abundance of hard kill cards, that feels okay. Something like Jace Lux feels not great. But yeah, you know, it's you know, despite Eddy being a fairly unbalanced archetype, I would say that things are in a decent place, assuming you know your workarounds for certain things, right? Like, you know that aggro's good, and aggro's going to punish all the memes, and then you know Rise is good, because Rise is going to punish all the Eddy players, the stat spam players. Like, that's like a big part of the population right there, is just memes, meme punish, stat spam punish. And then, you know, into good players, you might want to, who are also running, you know, comprehensive decks, you might want to run something like a combo-based rally mechanic, like Azir Irelia with Emperor's Army. You might want to run something like Iron Conquest because it's aggressive and it has like infinite value. there are, you know, enough options that I think ladder is going to be decently fun. This is Eternal King signing out.